Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a year, right? 1908. It's this time of intense contrasts in American history, especially, for African Americans.
You've got widespread violence on one hand, but also incredible progress happening. It's complex.
And right smack in the middle of all that, this groundbreaking organization for Black women gets started.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is how resilient this vision just emerges right out of that adversity. So our deep dive today is really about the beginnings and the lasting legacy of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
That's it. And we're pulling our insights from a really powerful source, the book Before You Pledge, essential information you should know about Black Greek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging and a culture of hazing. It's by Dr. Michael J. Winfield Sr., and it has a foreword by J.T. Childs Jr.
Yeah, great resource.
So our mission here is to basically take you on a journey through those key moments, the ones that really shaped this historic sisterhood, give you a shortcut,
Okay, so let's set the stage. 1908.
Right, so what does that year really mean? According to Dr. Winfield, it was a banner year for African Americans, but, and this is key, also a violent one.
That paradox again.
Yeah, you see it starkly in Springfield, Illinois. A violent white mob. They lynched 2 African Americans, destroyed Black-owned property, drove people from their homes. I mean, the National Guard had to be called out. It's just chilling.
Terrible. And yet, at the same time,
you have Jack Johnson, the Black heavyweight champ, knocking out a white boxer. A huge lift, for Black pride. A real counter-narrative happening right then.
Absolutely. And that backdrop, that tension, that's the world Alpha Kappa Alpha was born into. It really highlights the environment.
So how does an idea like this even start in such tough times?
Well, it really centers on Ethel Hedgeman. She was just 17, a student from St. Louis, Missouri, made history back in 1904, first from her school to get a scholarship to Howard University.
Wow, 17.
Yeah, and she had these strong values. Apparently a cheerful disposition, but really dedicated to her studies. She kind of set the stage.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The actual idea of a sorority. It came into focus for her through her teacher, her mentor, Ethel Tremaine Robinson.
Right, and according to the research, Mrs. Robinson was the first Black graduate of Pembroke College at Brown University.
Okay.
So she's telling Hedgeman all these stories about sorority life at Brown Rapid. The oaths, the rituals, the badges, the fancy teas, open houses.
Sounds like it really captured her imagination. The book says it fired Hedgeman's imagination about Greek life.
It did.
Yeah.
But here's a crucial piece of context, connecting it to the bigger picture. Mrs. Robinson's own experience.
What was that?
Well, despite knowing all about sorority life at Brown, and there were 7 Greek organizations there, when she graduated in 1905, she couldn't join.
Why not?
Because of the 1 drop of Negro blood rule. Even though apparently she could pass for white, she was barred.
Wow, that really underscores the racial barriers back then. Subtle but profound.
Exactly. So you can almost feel how that personal exclusion might have fueled her desire to help Hedgeman build something inclusive.
Fascinating. So Hedgeman is captivated, but she wants something more, right? Not just social stuff.
Precisely. She envisioned a sorority that really prioritized, actually embodied, sisterhood and service. Those were the fundamental pillars for her.
Not just buzzwords.
Not just buzzwords. Dr. Winfield says, for Hedgeman, the Alpha Kappa Alpha woman is guided by the spirit of generosity and a desire to advance the cause of humanity.
And Beulah Burke, who teamed up with Hedgeman, she noticed something similar at Howard, didn't she?
Yeah, she said there was no sisterly feeling. Everyone did her work individually. So there was this real void, this need for connection and purpose that AKA was ready to fill.
And with Mrs. Robinson's help, the actual plan came together. Hedgeman picking like-minded women, using her own leadership skills.
Things moved fast then.
They really did. Fall of 1907, Hedgeman and Marie Woolfolk take the idea to the Howard administration, and bam, approved immediately.
Just like that.
Just like that. Making Alpha Kappa Alpha the first organization of its kind for African-American women created at an HBCU. Huge deal.
Now, there's always this question, right? Was there any other influence? Blogger Vernon Herron, he's a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Okay.
He often connects the start of AKA to the Alpha Phi Alpha chapter starting at Howard. George Lyle was president there.
And the connection is?
Well, Ethel Hedgeman and George Lyle were apparently high school and college sweethearts. They later got married.
Okay. So Herron suggests maybe the idea came from their discussions. Mutual respect and constant dialogue, he says.
That's the theory, but...
But wait. Dr. Winfield shares Ethel Hedgeman's own words on this. The ultimate authority, really.
What did she say?
Unequivocally. I dated and subsequently married George Lisle, but he had absolutely nothing to do with the start of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Well, sets the record straight.
Totally. It really solidifies her singular vision, her drive.
Absolutely. So January 15th, 1908, Minor Hall at Howard. Hedgeman and 8 other women she carefully chose. They inaugurate the first Black Greek letter sorority.
And they quickly figure out the core stuff.
By their third meeting, they decide on the Greek motto, Askosis kai axiosis,
Which means
by culture and by merit. And that's where the name Alpha Kappa Alpha comes from.
Askosis kai axiosis. Got it. And the symbols are so meaningful, too.
Right. Dr. Winfield notes they picked the ivy leaf. Why? For its qualities of strength and endurance.
Makes sense. And the colors.
Salmon pink and apple green, representing an abundance of life, womanliness, fidelity, and love. Very intentional choices.
And then there's the coat of arms.
Yeah, that sums it all up. Through knowledge, culture, wisdom, endurance, and justice nurtured by sisterly love, we extend our service to all of humanity.
Wow.
And the symbols within it clasped hands for sisterhood, the atlas for endurance. They weren't just pretty pictures. You see, they were actively building a framework, a counter-narrative to the limitations society placed on them.
Building a foundation for change.
Exactly, from day one.
So the vision becomes public pretty quickly. February 28th, 1908. Lucy Diggs Slough hosts an open house to introduce AKA to Howard.
And Slough herself is fascinating. We should mention her contributions.
Definitely. What does the research say?
Dr. Winfield highlights her. She was a sports pioneer, won 17 tennis titles when hardly any Black athletes competed professionally.
No kidding.
Yeah, plus a talented singer. And, in a time when it was definitely not accepted, she lived openly with her partner, Mary Burrell, who was also a respected educator. It just adds layers to the founders' stories. Real trailblazers.
Absolutely. So the organization needed to grow, right? Ensure it continued.
Right, so the first group of new members, 7 honor students, they actually joined without an initiation, just to keep things going.
Practical.
Very. Then, February 11th, 1909, the first actual line crossed. They went through the formal induction. Hedgeman and Mrs. Robinson created the ritual, and Harriet Terry wrote the hymn, Hail Alpha Kappa Alpha.
A lot happening in those early days.
For sure. And that led to another tradition. It was a formal banquet, February 13th, 1909. That day also marked the start of planting ivy around campus.
Symbolizing growth, right?
Exactly. Growth and their ideals spreading. So basically, AKA's foundation rests on 3 groups. The 9 original founders, those 7 sophomore honor students, and then 4 key incorporators. Together, they're known as the 20 Pearls.
The 20 Pearls, okay. So things seem off to a strong start, but then trouble.
Yeah, fast forward a few years to the fall of 1912. AKA faces its first big challenge, a group of undergrads. They want to change things up.
Change what?
The name, motto, colors, symbols, basically everything, to make it, quote, more relevant to the times.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a potential crisis for a young group.
It really was. And this is where Nellie Quander steps in. According to Dr. Winfield, she very smartly thwarted a potential coup.
How? What was her concern?
She saw it as treachery and betrayal. These were students, mostly new to AKA, less than 2 years, trying to make what she saw as illegal changes. Quander had worked hard to build respect for the founders' vision, the traditions.
So these newer members, even though they were smart, high scholarship and ideals, they just didn't get the history, the roots.
That seems to be the heart of it. Research quotes someone saying, they not only wanted to pluck the ivy, they wanted to kill the roots. Strong words.
Wow, so reasoning didn't work.
Nope. Quander tried, but they wouldn't budge. So this group separated from AKA. They wanted to start something with what they saw as a more substantial Greek presence, more political, more socially active, less reserved.
And here's a twist.
Yeah, interestingly, Dr. Winfield notes that Ethel Tremaine Robinson Hedgeman's original mentor, she actually went with the group that left, AKA.
Whoa. Okay, that adds another layer. So this leads to a really critical moment.
Absolutely pivotal. Both groups knew the stakes were high. Nellie Quander, she seeks advice from a professor, George W. Cook.
And his advice?
Incorporate, make Alpha Kappa Alpha a legal entity. Protect it.
Smart move.
Very smart. It would safeguard against any future threats to its existence.
So when did that happen?
January 29th, 1913. Nellie Quander, Normie E. Boyd, Minnie B. Smith, they were key players in the incorporation. This legally cemented, AKA, as the first African-American sorority founded on a college campus in the U.S.
And it defined their mission legally, too.
Yes, articulated the educational mission, laid the groundwork for governance, everything was crucial.
And the group that left, the 22 undergrads.
They went on to make their own history, founding Delta Sigma Theta. And Dr. Winfield points out their distinction. They became the first black sorority founded exclusively by undergraduate female students upon their incorporation. Different origins.
Got it. Important distinction.
Yeah.
So AKA is legally secure. Now what?
Now the real work, as they say. Nellie Quander, now the national president, moves to restore AKA's status at Howard. Dr. Winfield's research shows she used the Howard University Journal strategically,
How so?
promoting AKA as the first and only sorority that existed in the university, emphasizing its standards, the mutual uplift, preparing women for women's problems, really reinforcing their identity and purpose.
And did it work? Did they bounce back?
It really did.
Yeah.
Within 9 months of incorporating in 1913, the sisterhood starts spreading. Beulah Burke charters the Beta chapter in Chicago that October.
So expansion begins.
Yep. By 1918, they have 7 chapters across the country. They're growing.
And they even had to adjust how they named chapters.
Yeah. By 1921, they needed a system for undergrad, grad, alumni chapters. Shows foresight, right? The second national president, Lorraine Richardson Green, her slogan was organization and expansion. It fueled that growth.
Now, around this time, there was also this broader club movement of colored women, right? Was AKA part of that?
That's a great question. Ethel Hedgeman, though, was pretty clear about it later. In 1933, she said, AKA was organized as a sorority, not as a club. She drew a distinct line.
Interesting. But you could see how the club movement might have influenced things.
Oh, absolutely. Connecting to the bigger picture, that movement definitely inspired young black women, Hedgeman included, that desire for a support network, using talents for others. It was in the air.
So different paths, maybe, but a shared goal of upliftment.
Exactly. Both were critical forces. The sorority structure offered one specific way, the clubs offered others. Complementary, really.
And AKA started its own publication, too.
The Ivy Leaf magazine, first published in 1921, initially focused on culture, arts, but it grew with the organization.
What did it cover later?
It became a platform, affirming the right to education, challenging stereotypes about black women, always working to uplift women and girls.
And that commitment to education showed up in programs, too.
Definitely. Dr. Winfield mentions the Ivy Leaf clubs encouraging high school girls to go to college, plus scholarships. Empowering the next generation was core from early on.
Beyond education, though, they got involved in civil rights pretty early.
Remarkably early. 1920, actively pushing for the dire anti-lynching bill, campaigning against lynching. That commitment was there from the start.
And it continued with things like the Mississippi Health Project.
Yeah, 1935, that was groundbreaking. Taking health services, medical aid, immunizations, education directly into rural, underserved black communities in Mississippi. Real hands-on service.
How did they make their voice heard politically on a larger scale?
Well, according to the research, in 1938, they set up groups focused on economic and democratic rights. Then the Nonpartisan Council on Public Affairs. And under Norma Boyd's leadership, AKA became the first black organization to hire a full-time lobbyist.
A full-time lobbyist. Wow.
Yeah, specifically to push for legislation that reflected the black community's interests. A really strategic move to influence policy directly.
And that commitment carried straight through the civil rights era.
Absolutely. 1947, they helped form the American Council on Human Rights with other Greek oars to fight discrimination. And in 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was honored at their national convention. Coretta Scott King became an honorary member too.
They were really in the thick of it.
Deeply involved. And their impact wasn't just political lobbying. Think about their economic and social work too.
Like what?
Well, Dr. Winfield points out, for their 50th anniversary, they gave $15,000 for sickle cell anemia research, then $38,000 to support a black-owned firm on Wall Street.
So tackling health and economic empowerment.
Yeah.
Exactly, a multifaceted approach. And then, 1965, this is huge, they got a $4 million federal contract to set up and run the first Job Corps Center specifically for women in Cleveland.
$4 million back then for job training.
Job training, education, life skills, a major investment in women's economic independence. Truly groundbreaking.
And the legacy just keeps growing, right? The centennial celebration in 2008 sounded massive.
It was huge. 100 years of sisterhood and service. 25,000 members and guests set a Guinness World Record for meals served at their banquet.
That's amazing. And the impact goes beyond parties, obviously. Barbie dolls, schools in South Africa.
Tens of thousands of shoe boxes with school supplies sent to kids. Their reach became truly global.
And that commitment to HBCUs remains strong.
Incredibly strong, according to Dr. Winfield, raising $2.1 million in 24 hours for HBCU Impact Day, giving $50,000 endowments to 31 HBCUs. That shows a deep, ongoing investment in Black education.
So their current work, under the theme Soaring to Greater Heights of Service and Sisterhood, it still reflects those core values.
Clearly. Strengthening sisterhood, empowering families, building economic wealth, environmental work, social justice advocacy, uplifting local communities. It all ties back to that original motto, service to all mankind.
It's quite a story. Over a century of impact.
Truly extraordinary.
So just to recap some key AKA facts for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Motto is by culture and by merit.
Colors: salmon pink and apple green.
Flower. The pink tea rose. Symbol, the ivy leaf.
Their publication is the Ivy Leaf magazine.
Over 1,046 chapters worldwide now. That's incredible growth.
Known as the AKAs. Headquarters at 5656 Stony Island Avenue, Chicago, Illinois.
You've just heard this deep dive into the history and impact of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Incorporated. From that vision at Howard in 1908 through challenges, incorporation, decades of service, they really have lived that motto.
Yeah, to be supreme in service to all mankind. And connecting this to the bigger picture, AKA really stands as this powerful testament, doesn't it, to what collective action, sisterhood, and that relentless drive for justice can achieve.
Especially for Black women and girls. Exactly. Their stories is just such a strong reminder of how purpose-driven groups can make profound, lasting change. And keep adapting, keep evolving.
So what does this mean for you listening? Maybe it's just thinking about how a dedicated group sharing values can overcome huge obstacles and literally shape history and continue to make a difference today.
And if you want to explore even more and get deeper into the details, we absolutely recommend the book that guided us today, Before You Pledge. Essential information you should know about Black Greek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging in a culture of hazing. It's by Dr. Michael J. Winfield, Sr., with that foreword by J.T. Childs, Jr.
Yep, you can find that essential book on Amazon.com, and also check out Quest Excel Multimedia's website, www.questexcelmultimedia.com. That's QUESTEXEELMULTIMEDIA.com. Great place to dive deeper.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been fascinating to trace this history.
It really has. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.